Well, welcome everyone. Good to see you all. My name is Ramona Harvey. I'm the coaching manager here at WIA, and I know many of you here, but not everyone. Hi, Erin. Welcome. Welcome to Empower Hour. I am really excited to have you all here, and I will just say for those of you who don't know what Women's Impact Alliance is, we are a nonprofit, and our sole focus is to help women around the world who are leaders in the social justice space. So that is a mission that we are really excited to be part of. And we have volunteer coaches that essentially are supporting incredible women leaders in this important time in this important space. So we are very excited to host Empower Hour, which is a quarterly event, our most popular event. We do lots of events, and this one is open to everyone. It's open to our entire WA community. So catalysts, which is what we call women who are going through our Empower Leader program, our coaches like Dr. Sweta and myself, we are volunteer coaches for WIA. So this gives you a taste also of what a coach's perspective sounds like. And of course, many of you are coaches, so it's good WIA coaches. So I'd love to have our community together and welcome everyone. And with that, I want to introduce Dr. Sweta, and she is, as I said, a WIA coach. And also, I would let you, Sweta, introduce yourself, but I do want to say that we are really lucky to have Dr. Sweta. She is an amazing keynote speaker. She's a former doctor, and she currently is a coach empowering women. So this is a perfect space to have her. And today, Dr. Sweta will talk about this really awesome topic that I think all of us coaches and all of us women are familiar with and all are maybe personally familiar with. And the topic is from imposter to empowered. Elevate your confidence and energy. This is a topic that I know from just reviewing applications of so many catalysts, reviewing the bios and applications of coaches who are applying to be WA coaches, that this is something that we're all familiar with. Coaches are familiar with coaching this. And then women applying through the program, this is often one of their goals. So we wanted to have Dr. Sweta today share her wisdom with us. So with that, I just want to give Dr. Sweta a warm welcome. And yeah, take it from here.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Well, good morning from California. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I am so excited to be here today. I'm already like loving all the shares in the chat, just how the energy in here and also even the authenticity that I'm already seeing with the way that you guys are sharing. And as Ramona said, imposter syndrome is such a popular topic. It's definitely one that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with you some of the things that I've learned from both going through it myself, but also coaching hundreds of, and mainly women, through this very, very common experience. I'm going to be sharing my slides, and I just want to share if there's anything that I mentioned that really resonates with you. I'd love having your feedback and interaction. So if you want to drop anything in the chat or share an emoji or even take a screenshot of anything, that's all really welcome. And I'm not going to do like any official introduction because there are so many elements of who I am and what I'm about that are sprinkled into my talk. So sit back and enjoy the ride. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see this? Yeah. Okay. So, whether you are a social impact leader, a coach, or a founder of an organization, have you ever had the experience of doing extraordinary work? Maybe getting a new role, getting recognition through excellent feedback, or even an award. And maybe you take that in for a minute, but then you automatically discount yourself with thoughts like, if they only really knew the real me, right? If they knew the anxiety that I feel or the thoughts that I have, or maybe you have a fear that this could be taken away, at any minute. If that's something you resonate with, I'd love for you to just drop a why into the chat. And here's the interesting thing about imposter syndrome. It's a paradox, as Adam Grant so beautifully shared, right? Other people believe in you, but you don't believe in yourself, yet you believe yourself instead of believing them. So shouldn't you doubt yourself when it comes to your own judgment, right? but we don't. It's just such a hard thing to do to be able to see kind of the impact, the accomplishments that we have, the feedback that we get from people on the way that we make them feel, and really be able to internalize that. And this is something that I know so deeply. So, as was mentioned, in my former life, I was a clinical professor of pharmacy at the ripe young age of 25 years old. And so you can imagine how much imposter syndrome I had. And honestly, it kind of felt warranted, right? Because if you're anything like me, I just assume that if you're going to be a professor, you need to have experience and maybe even a little bit of gray hair. But the interesting thing is that 10 years into that role, that feeling of I don't deserve to be here, like, not really feeling secure, never went away. No matter how many certificates, degrees, awards, letters I had behind my name. I mean, look at that wall. There was nothing that I could do that could help me to really be able to feel like I deserved to be there. And that fear again of being seen as a fraud, it was something that was constantly on my mind. And that essentially is what imposter phenomenon, which is a word that was coined during the 1970s by two women researchers, is really all about. It was basically based on a study that was done in 100 high achieving women. And no matter how much education, external accomplishments they had, they never really were able to get rid of that self doubt or truly feel competent, right? And here's the thing, while it can often present as self doubt, there's also other ways, sneaky ways, that consciously or unconsciously imposter syndrome can show up. And so, on a high level, I just want to again do a little bit of a check in here. Here are some common ways, and we're going to get a little bit more specific in a few slides, but which one of these do you identify with most? Are you somebody who constantly overworks and feels like you need to kind of do more and more? Or are you somebody who's constantly second guesses yourself or downplays your achievements? Now, you might identify with all of these like I do, but I'd love to just, which one feels most alive for you right now? If you can just drop a one, two, or three in the chat. I'll just give you a second to do that. Okay. We got quite a few threes and twos here, a couple of ones as well, right? So the first thing that I just want you to see is number one, you're not alone, right? But more than that, what I really want to talk about is not only does that not feel good to constantly feel that way, but there's also consequences to that, right? It shows up in our behaviors. It looks like missing out on opportunities because we doubt our qualifications. And what's that study that shows that if there's a job description and if, a woman doesn't meet 100% of that job description, she won't apply for it, but a man, if it's 60%, they'll go for it, right? On top of that, if you are somebody that feels like, okay, I'm making a lot of accomplishments, I'm getting a lot of recognition, but you never really ever feel like it's enough. And I could tell you that was definitely the case for me. No matter how many certificates or awards I got, it was like that goalpost just kept on being pushed further and further away. It can also look like no matter how much experience you have, that you are just constantly trying to perfect everything, right? Trying to overperform so that your deliverables are 100%, which we all know is impossible, right? It can also lead to self sabotage, and that can look like holding back and not speaking up in meetings, not sharing your thoughts and ideas, not networking so that you can have more opportunities. So I'm going to take a moment to let's get a little bit more specific now. So I'm going to name a couple of ways that I've seen that these imposter thoughts or behaviors show up. And I'm going to name one through five for you. And I'd love for you again to listen. You might identify with all of them, but which one feels the most alive for you right now? Number one, do you secretly worry you're not as smart as everyone thinks you are? Number two, do you chalk your accomplishments up to luck, timing, or connections? Number three, do you hyper focus on what you didn't do right, exaggerate your flaws? Number four, does negative feedback put you in a spiral? And number five, when you do succeed, do you feel like you are getting away with something? And again, you might resonate with more than one of these, but I encourage you to maybe just really focus on the one or two that's most alive for you right now. And I'll give you a second to pop that in the chat. One, two, three, four, or five. Let's see. Oh, we got across the board here. One, two, three, five. Okay. A couple of more. Let's see. Lots of threes. So I'm seeing lots of threes, twos, and fives, right? And here's the thing, oftentimes we think that that means we have a confidence problem. But really, what I want to kind of name here is that imposter syndrome isn't always a confidence problem. Oftentimes, it's a conditioning problem. You might be aware of this Harvard Business Review article that was published in 2021. Stop telling women they have imposter syndrome. And it really struck a chord with so many women, and not just women, but people in other marginalized groups like LGBTQA plus community or the disabled community, because it named something that so many of us experience in the environments that we've worked in or been educated in, that they're not designed for us, right? That the way we talk, the way we speak, the way we present our ideas aren't always valued. And oftentimes, these environments actually amplify that feeling by suppressing our voice or making us feel like we need to disconnect from ourselves or celebrating over producing and performing, right? And that can really, again, impact us. But when we're able to see that it's not necessarily us, but the system that we're responding to, we start to take our power back. Because this is something that I see with so many of the clients that I work with. And I want to share a story with you of somebody that I work with in a year-long leadership development program that I was doing for an organization. Let's name her Kay. So she was somebody who was working really hard and she was really getting, making a difference. She was having impact. She was getting really positive feedback. But when it came time to apply for an executive role, she didn't really feel like she could go for it. And one of the main reasons was because she didn't feel like she had enough credentials. And well meaning mentors reflected this back to her as well, because they were trying to make sure that she didn't feel disappointed. But one of the things that we did in helping her to take her power back was to remove the validation that we're seeking to feel like we're enough to go for the things that we know we're meant for based on kind of externals, but to really be able to identify what was what was it about her that was having her have the impact that she was having. And what we identified that it wasn't about her resume or the credentials. It was really about her ability to be able to listen deeply, to be able to navigate nuance, to be able to ask catalytic questions so she could move her team into taking action. Once she was able to name it and see this, an interesting shift started to happen. She stopped waiting for permission to lead, and she started to lead from that place of knowing the value that she had to add. And here's the interesting thing that happened. When she started to do that, it gave her the confidence to apply for that role, which she got. But this isn't a story about credibility. This is a story about possibility because you can't create new possibilities performing for old approvals. And I learned this myself. So, a few years into my decade long career as a clinical professor of pharmacy, I had an opportunity to take a sabbatical. And during that sabbatical, I asked myself a question that I was too busy to ask myself previously, which was what parts of my work made me come alive? And where was I having the impact that I really cared about? And I have to tell you, it was surprising to me because it wasn't the big lectures. It wasn't padding my CV with publications or doing committee work or even speaking on stages for pharmaceutical companies. It was experiential education. It was talking with people instead of at them. And it was also on that sabbatical that I did something else that was interesting, which was I started to follow my curiosity instead of what I think I needed to do to be able to grow in my career. And that led me to applying for Doctors Without Borders. I didn't get an opportunity to go on a medical mission trip through them, but when I came back to the university, I saw something that I would have never seen before. And that was a call from the Dean of Nursing who was inviting a group to to start a medical clinic in Haiti after the 2010 earthquake. And because I felt like that was the kind of impact I want to have, I went. As soon as we arrived, we quickly found out that our driver only spoke Spanish. And so I ended up becoming the unofficial translator of the trip. And as you can imagine, by taking on that role, I started to organically become the problem solver and the coordinator. And what was interesting about that wasn't that I had stepped up into that, it was how natural it felt. Because I was one of the youngest people in that group. On top of that, I was the only pharmacist. And if you know anything about healthcare, pharmacists and nurses don't always play that well together. And while some of the nurses kind of leaned in, there were nurses that were like, who does she think she is? And I have to tell you, for someone like me, that cut so deep because I was bullied when I was younger. And my mission in life was to never draw attention to myself. I didn't want to have a target on my back. I never wanted to rock the boat. But in that situation, I was able to be brave and move beyond my insecurities. And when I reflect on why, it's because I was operating from one of my core genuine values of service. Not an aspirational value, but something that truly was a value that had meaning for me. On top of that, I was leading from what I call my brilliance as a translator, not just of language, but one of my gifts is to be able to, hear what's like. One of the things I always say to my coaches is, you can ramble. You don't need to have your thoughts, concise or figured out, because one of my superpowers is to be able to take that ramble and to be able to unearth what's actually happening. And so by leading both from my genuine core values and my brilliance, I was connecting to something much deeper, my authentic identity. And that is one of the core pillars of a framework that I call leading beyond the ladder. This isn't something I learned in a textbook. This is something that I've experienced myself, and after kind of analyzing what was creating the transformations in the clients that I had the pleasure of being able to support. We don't have time to go through this whole entire model, but what I want to bring to your attention and what we're really going to focus on today is this foundational pillar of authentic identity. And there's three parts to it. There's taking back your power, identifying your core genuine values, again, not your aspirational values, but your genuine values, and knowing your brilliance. And I want to give you an example of what this looks like in one of my clients. So my client S, I'll say, is somebody that came to me. She was a young Black woman in venture capital. And when she came to me, she said, I want to be able to have executive presence and to be able to convince LPs in Silicon Valley to invest in my fund. As we started to do this work, in figuring out what her genuine core values are, naming her brilliance, we started to take her power back. And this is what it looked like. What we discovered was that the way that Silicon Valley operated wasn't actually in alignment with what she wanted to create. A lot of the structures in that space was about, going fast and really inflating kind of values and making these promises for like big wins really quick. And for her, she really believed in being slow, intentional, building relationships, and building something that was really sustainable. One of her gifts in doing that was that she had a gift of being able to read people and read patterns. And when we were able to name this stuff, we started to be able to take her power back. And we shifted her goal from convincing to conviction. And when we did that, the rooms literally started to change. Instead of trying to hustle and prove herself and kind of fit in Silicon Valley, she found herself in spaces in San Diego where she didn't have to prove her value or explain herself. People were organically attracted to the way she was showing up. It didn't mean that she didn't have to articulate ideas more to be able to move them into real collaboration, but she again wasn't trying to perform. She was showing up as her true self and that authentic identity. And the other interesting thing about that was that she was also living where she wanted to live. She wanted to live by the ocean. And when she made this decision to, really operate from this place of her genuine core values and her brilliance and taking her power back, that rootedness gave her so much more energy and confidence. Suddenly she wasn't leaking power, again, trying to fit in or trying to perform. And not only did she start to feel better, but she was actually having the impact that she was meant to have. It started to feel so effortless and natural. But here's the thing. Oftentimes, we dismiss what feels effortless because we've been taught that what counts must be hard. But when you lead with your natural brilliance, it's actually not hard. Think about all the stories that we hear about success, right? Is like work hard to have success. And yes, while that might get us to success, maybe help us to be able to survive, I think when it comes to being empowered, what we're really looking for is thriving. And so it requires being able to, again, lead naturally in your brilliance and shine bright. But here's the thing. that can feel scary, right? Because as Marianne Williamson says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And when we start to be able to really step into that and really root into, again, our values, be in our power, and lead with brilliance by shining bright, we start to create safety in our own system. And that safety starts to ripple out and reshape systems. Like this amazing example, Alyssa Liu. How many of you were obsessed with her performance at the, yeah, right, at the Olympics? And here's the thing, of course, she did such a wonderful job, but I don't think that we were so just enamored by her performance. We were enamored by the way she did it. It wasn't just about striving for a gold star, it was being the gold star. And if you don't know her story, she was at the top of her game at the Beijing Olympics when she walked away from everything. And when she came back, she decided to come back on her terms. She said, I'm not going to suppress my diet. I'm going to dress the way that I want to dress. I'm going to perform to the music that I want to perform to. I'm going to do my hair and my makeup the way that I want to. And if you watched her live, you saw how much joy she performed with, right? That's what it looks like to root into your authentic identity and to lead naturally. Because the truth is, it's not just about performance. And what would happen for you if you gave yourself, like Alyssa Liu, to be able to gave yourself permission to play full out instead of performing, and to be able to lead with how you make people feel, and to be able to really recognize that and integrate that and have and value that. Because as Maya Angelou says, what she's learned is that people will forget what you did. People will never forget how you made them feel, right? But again, how you make people feel isn't something that you can put on a resume, right? So how does this really be able to how does leading and really being able to integrate the way you make people feel translate into empowerment, translate into impact, right? So let me give you an example. One of the things, and one of the ways to do this, and I love doing this with my coaches, is I have them send out a form to people that know them in all walks of life. So anywhere from personal friends to coworkers to bosses, with questions around what is the way that they make people feel when they work with them, to remember a project or a time that they worked with someone, and what's the presence that they bring in the space? How does it shift a space? And it's such a powerful experience because undeniably, every single time they get these back, you can always see a thread. And to give you an example, for me, one of the things that people would always say about me is how warm I am, right? They would say that, when the way my demeanor is. But even in my personal life, my son, he literally comes into my room and he melts when he's around me. And he's a teenager, okay? So how does, again, making people, creating a warm space or being warm, how does that again translate into empowerment and impact? Well, as a coach, as a facilitator, I work with high achieving people, and being able to create warmth allows them to be able to melt and be more vulnerable so that we can really get to the root of the things that are holding them back, right? So there's a lot of power in being able to name it, translate it, which again is one of my brilliances, and to be able to lead from that. So I want to give you an opportunity to be able to reflect that for yourself. Okay. So I want you to think about a time. I want you to be able to name it so you can claim it. I want you to think about a time recently, or maybe it's a mountaintop experience in your career where you felt like so in your element, where you felt really energized. Okay. Where you were not, it wasn't just that you were getting amazing feedback externally, like you actually felt like you were so connected to yourself, right? Who were you with? What were you doing? And if you are able to identify, and there's no perfect way to do this, it takes time to kind of think about these things, but just give it a shot. If you were to be able to name a value that you were honoring or a unique brilliance that you were kind of leading from and expressing, how would you name it? What would that be? And I'd love for you to think about that for a minute. I'll give you a minute to think about that. Type it in the chat. And I actually would love to, if anybody wants to share or maybe even workshop some stuff, happy to do that. So I'm going to stop my screen for a second. But again, I want you to think about a recent experience or a mountaintop experience, time moment in your career where you felt like you were so in your element, where you felt so alive and energized, and you were having the impact that you wanted to have. If you were to name a genuine core value that you were honoring or a brilliance that you were leading from, how would you describe it? Take a minute to think about that. Drop it in the chat. And then if anybody wants to workshop, like I said, if you, because one of my gifts is being able to translate rambling, happy to do that. So if there's any brave souls, just raise your hand. Okay. Vision. Amazing. Oh, thank you, Emma. So sweet. Any other ones? Come on, guys. Let's be brave. Name it to claim it. Again, this is a way that you show up that makes you, that has the impact that, that shifts the room in a way that people really recognize. And maybe it's like things people always say about how you make them feel, right? Or perhaps it's impact that really meant a lot to you. All right, beautiful. Let's see. Value, freedom, being in service, brilliance, listening from the heart. Oh, these are awesome. Belonging, thoughtfulness, kindness, really seeing and connecting with people, making everyone feel like they belong in the space. Core value, authenticity, brilliance, and empathetic listening. These are amazing. Oh my God, I'm loving reading this. Giving and receiving love to all, helping people identify with their inside versus their outside. Wow, these are so good. Listen to all the integrity, right? Bringing the best in people. And so here's the thing, if we're constantly trying to, prove ourselves through credibility or what we can put on our resume, and we dismiss these really valuable things that we bring into the room, not only, again, do we lose energy, but the people that we're meant to serve miss out, right? So coming back to,
Sweta, we have a volunteer if you still
oh,
want
we
to work
do.
out.
Yay. Okay.
Lauren.
Ooh. Let's see, Lauren, where are you? I
Oh,
don't see you.
it's me. I think it's Florence.
Flo, yeah.
Okay, go for it, Flo. Please share.
All right, well, I hope I'm sharing what you're looking for here, but I put up,
No right way to do it.
okay,
Okay.
all right. So I put
No
up the word
right.
vision, and I
Mm,
think something that I feel like I have trouble with is I've created two nonprofits that are both still doing well, and I've left the last one recently to start a social enterprise doing similar work to one of the nonprofits. Um, and I think in all these cases, I've had a very clear vision and would work within them. Also, I have sort of a clear vision of where we're going. But I think what I sometimes have trouble with is that when people don't believe in it or don't want to support it, it's because they need to see sort of every
yeah.
detailed step laid out for how we're going to get from where we are, which with my current enterprise is at, almost
Yeah.
nothing, to this big vision. And
Right.
and I've got part of it in my head and part of it I don't know yet, but I just have faith that we will figure it out as we go. Um, and so I think that's something that I have sort of trouble with conveying. But
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And can I ask you a question?
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I hear you really recognizing this is your brilliance, is you're a visionary. And what I've also heard is while there is some challenges and struggles with being able to convey that, that you've created two successful organizations.
Mhm.
So what I'm curious of is how did you create success in these organizations, even with the challenging of not always being able to convey or get buy-in?
Um, I guess perseverance is what jumps to mind. I think I just kept doing the next step uh to sort of prove that that it was possible, and then to show that we could get that much further along. But
Yeah.
I did, um, and particularly with the larger organization that I started and left recently, I felt frustrated a lot of the times because I felt like we could be doing a lot more,
Mm,
and uh, was sort of held back by um, the fact that I could not effectively get all of the staff and the board
right.
to see the possibility that we really could um, be moving towards this bigger vision,
Yeah.
and achieve more, even though we were doing good work, but I felt like we could be doing a lot more.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And that's so real because oftentimes we can have these successes and we know that we are kind of leading from our values and we're leading from our brilliance, but we can still have challenges and frustrations. And so if we were in a coaching situation, one of the things that I would do, and this is one of the, the values of having spaces like WIA's Catalyst program or working one-on-one with a coach or being in some sort of a mastermind, is that there's time to be able to explore these things and to be able to unpack them. So oftentimes I always say design based on your data, right? So what worked? How do we leverage what has worked? And then where do we need to fine tune some stuff? So what is causing that frustration? Because frustration usually means the way we're doing it is not the way that we need to be doing it, right? Something needs to shift in that. And that could look like maybe some of managing your own expectations. Maybe it is working on how you articulate things, but maybe it's also like really connecting more in your, again, the values and really being able to identify the people that you want to work with and the rooms changing like with my other client, right? And that's again the beauty of being able of when we start to explore and have these types of conversations. This is not something that we're ever we don't do in school, right? We don't have like, how do we identify our brilliance? How do we know if we're aligned with what we're doing? Where can we amplify and root more into our authentic identity? We're often taught how to perform, how to really disconnect from ourselves, how to be able to present in a way. And again, I'm not saying that sometimes we don't need to like amplify our skills, but when you amplify your skills without being rooted, it's like having a tree without a trunk, right? And it might look really nice, but it's not able to oftentimes weather those storms, right? And really be able to have that resilience. So, again, when we take the time to be able to have these conversations, explore these things, unpack them, and being in a container that helps you to do that, it really starts to shift not only the results, but how you experience your day to day. And going back to my presentation, thank you, Flo, so much for sharing that. These are real quotes from a WIA coach that I had when she was able to make this shift from performance to really being able to root into her identity. She stopped replaying conversations for hours, right? She started to feel like herself at work for the first time. And I remember she even said, like, if she messed up, she didn't spiral anymore. She just apologized and she owned it because, again, when you are rooted in this way, you're not, your worthiness is not so dependent on how things turn out. You feel connected to the way you're showing up. And when things work out, of course, it's something to celebrate. It's what we want, but it isn't the root of our value, right? So here's the thing though, we don't work in a vacuum. Okay. There are organizations and systems that, again, are not designed for us, right? So making the choice to be able to say, I want to lead from my brilliance, I want to lead from my values, I want to lead through my power takes courage, right? Because the reality is oftentimes the environment that we live in, education system and the workplace actually is a pressure cooker of, again, trying to get us to perform in a certain way. And so while we may be meeting it, right? So we adapt to our environments, it oftentimes comes at a cost. And oftentimes that cost is all the stuff that we feel underneath the surface, right? The burnout, the frustration, the not being recognized. Okay. And what happens is we start to adapt, right? To be able to survive our environments, right? And that isn't necessarily, and so when you feel that disconnect, it's not necessarily a sign of you're losing confidence. It's just that you learn how to survive in environments that didn't always reflect your full value. Okay. And we respond with these adaptation strategies. And some of the most common ones I've seen after coaching hundreds of people are perfectionism, people pleasing, and overperforming, right? So perfectionism looks like I need to get this right. People pleasing means I need to be liked. Overperforming looks like I need to prove myself, right? So I'm going to go through each one of these a little bit more, and I want you to again pay attention to which one of these resonate for you. And if like me, all three of them, okay? But I want you to think about where you're specifically feeling like you're having imposter feelings and which one of these is kind of running the show. So perfectionism isn't really about excellence, right? It's looking for 100%. And 100% is just not even, it's not realistic. What's underneath it is that fear of failing, right? The fear of making a mistake, of being criticized. And oftentimes it holds us back from even taking action because if we can't see that we can do 100%, we don't go for it, right? Or we do go for it, but again, we're constantly judging ourselves that it's not enough. We're not doing it good enough, right? Whereas people pleasing is really, again, about that fear of rejection, not wanting to rock the boat, like I shared with in my story, the way that I operated until I got to Haiti, right? It's like just always trying to fit in, to feel belonging. So you say yes to things, but you meant to say no to, or you're not even really thinking about what would be an integrity here? What is the value that I need to honor, right? And then there's overperforming, right? Which is really about like, I have to give so much to prove that I'm worthy of being here, right? And it just, again, it keeps you constantly saying yes when you mean to say no, taking on more and more and more, and not actually recognizing that the impact that you have through your presence, through sharing, through leading with your unique brilliance, through, operating from your values. And so I want to take a minute to pause as I've shared these descriptions of people pleasing, performing, and perfectionism. Which one of them feels most alive to you in the places that you feel like you're having imposter feelings? So if you can drop them in the chat, that would be great. And here if you want to do one, two, or three, we'll have perfectionism be one, people pleasing two, and overperforming be three. I'll give you a minute to drop that in the chat. Okay. Oh, wow, these are coming in fast. Okay, lots of people pleasing. I'm seeing all of them. Yeah, totally. Twos and threes. Okay. Yeah, lots of twos and threes. And again, so here's the thing. Hmm, Wait, sorry. Too many things going on here. I don't know how to close the chat. Okay, here we go. Oh, before I go that, if you find yourself in any of these traits, it's not a reason for you to again to be able to start judging yourself, right? It's a way for you to be able to recognize where you go when you're disconnected. It's not a character flaw. It's not something that you need to fix. Again, it's something to notice. And it's a signal that you're about to go into imposter behaviors. And that again can look like, discounting yourself or second guessing yourself. And it's a way to be able to give you an opportunity to make a choice. And so, one thing that I want to share with you of how I help my clients do this is I created this thing called a decision matrix for people pleasers, overperformers, and perfectionists. Because oftentimes, when we're operating from one of these archetypes, we're not able to make empowered decisions. And this is a simple PDF. And what it does is it helps you to be able to identify which one of these adaptation strategies you're kind of leaking into. And then it asks a question, an inquiry to help you to be able to reframe and come back to yourself so that, again, you can make a decision from a place of empowerment. And so I'd love to gift this to all of you. I'm going to ask you to give me some feedback by scanning this code. And if somebody from WIA can just drop a link into the chat if you're on your phone and you can't scan, to just give me this some feedback because that would mean so much to me. And as soon as you do that, when you do that, you'll get this PDF in your inbox by tomorrow morning. So I'll give you 30 to 60 seconds to be able to fill that out. It's pretty easy. It doesn't take that long. And I just want to make sure that the link is dropped in the chat. Thank you so much, Mina. Oops. Sorry, guys. Trying to like get the chat closed. Good thing I'm an overcoming, recovering perfectionist. I wish I had some music to play when I do this.
I know that would be nice.
Ramona, maybe you can sing for us.
Yeah, I can dance. I think that's my superpower.
It's cool because I can see people filling it out, so I know when how much time to give. You never know.
Good.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay. If you didn't get a chance to fill it out, please just copy that link or take a picture of that QR code so that you can fill it out tomorrow. And maybe WIA can also send it out. Because again, I'd love your feedback and I'd love you to have the opportunity to get that decision-making matrix. But as we close, one thing that I want to just kind of again bring you back to is if you find yourself again operating from any of these, people pleaser or perfectionist or overperformer, again, it's not something that needs to be fixed, right? It's a signal. And if you take it as a signal and you pause and you use one of your tools to help you to come back to yourself, to help you to root into your authentic identity by taking back your power, by, really asking yourself, what's the value here that I want to honor? Or by naming a brilliance that you want to lead with. Not only again will it make you feel better, but it will also oftentimes ripple out into greater impact than you ever even imagined because you don't become empowered by proving yourself. You become empowered by being yourself. And that's the conclusion of my talk. I'm so thankful to all of you for giving me the time to be able to share all of this with you, for participating, whether it was in the chat and flow. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with everybody. I'd love to stay in touch. So please connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website and you can sign up for my newsletter. But I would love to kind of take some time to answer questions, or if there's anything that anybody wants to share. Anybody else that wants to maybe workshop, happy to do that. I think we have a good 10, 15 minutes. Thank you guys for all the emojis.
And I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Sweta, for this just absolutely amazing talk. And it's wonderful to see you in your brilliance and modeling what it's like for us to own our gifts, own our brilliance, be able to name those unique gifts. And I really love how you are sharing the that our brilliance is really rooted in our authenticity and that's the work. So thank
I
you. And I see
I have a
Athena.
quick question.
Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah.
Dr. Sweeta. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for all you do for WIA. I'm a board member, and I just appreciate your generous donation of your time as a coach for our amazing catalyst and also doing this with us today. It's, as Ramona said, it's really beautiful to witness you in your brilliance.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
it's such an
and
honor.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about if you see any difference with women who are in the earlier part of their career versus women who are 15 years in or 20 years in or something like that in terms of dealing with imposter syndrome.
Oh, that is such a good question. So, the majority of folks that I coach are mid-career, and it's usually mid-career transition. So, they are, tend to be more senior leaders or middle managers. And the way that imposter syndrome shows up in them is that oftentimes they're shifting, right, into a new role or maybe a new profession. And so, there's this expectation of the success or the level of comfort that I had at the top of my former role or former profession should be the same when I come into this new into the new identity or new position, right? And I could tell you that was the case for me. Like when I shifted from being a clinical professor of pharmacy to being a coach, I was just like, oh, I made a certain amount of money. I've had a certain amount of impact that should translate, right? But just because you're a good soccer player doesn't mean that you're going to be an amazing baseball player, right? There's always a learning curve. And I think that oftentimes if we're mid-career, we don't give ourselves that grace. Whereas I have been coaching more and more emerging leaders because I have to tell you, and this is actually an amazing thing that I'm noticing is that these kinds of conversations are happening earlier on in people's career trajectories, which is really incredible. And a lot, they don't necessarily have that expectation. I mean, maybe if they've come from like an Ivy League or something, but honestly, I facilitate at Stanford and there's so much imposter syndrome in that space. It usually is the story that I had when I first started out in my career, right? Like, who am I? I don't have the experience, I don't have the credibility. And so it's really about helping them to be able to not create these patterns. It's trying to prevent these patterns from really sinking in where I will feel better when I reach this goal or when I have this accomplishment and then doing it and still feeling that disconnect or that emptiness. So it's really like naming it kind of earlier on. So I'd say that's the kind of the two different things that I see. That was such a great question.
Thank you. Yeah, that really is interesting. It makes so much sense what you're saying of that early part where you don't have as many expectations of yourself. And then, yeah, when you get further on, you're thinking, I should already know this, I should
Yeah.
already have it down. Yeah, that's fascinating. And is there any different strategy that you use with the different stages?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you can't when you don't have much of a career trajectory,
Yeah.
it's hard to, I always say design based on your data. So when you're mid-career, we can always look back at like the exercise I did with all of you. But you can get that information even from being in school, right? Like when did you feel most in your element? Because I always say you're one person, right? So your brilliance is not just who you are at work. Like I gave the example of my son, right? So these are things that we can identify if we really look at them with a holistic lens. There might be more time spent to be able to like how Flo was like easily be able to say like I'm a visionary. It sometimes takes a little more to be able to name it because again, oftentimes we look at like our accomplishments and what we've created on our resume as to point to our brilliance, but our strengths are not always our brilliance. So sometimes it takes a little bit more of being able to kind of explain what I mean by that.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much.
You're so welcome.
I know
There,
there's other questions out there.
yeah, here's your chance. If you want to name anything so you can claim it, I always say when we name something in a space, that's often one of the best ways to take our power back. So if anybody here wants to claim their brilliance out loud, I'd love to hear it. I'm sure everybody would love to hear it. Yeah, any brave souls? Okay, no
I
problem.
think Chris is about to do it. Where'd you go,
I
Chris?
Yeah.
see it too. Yeah, I see her
I was
faces. It's
like,
so fun. I didn't want
I'm
to put
gonna,
her on the
I'm
spot.
I'm gonna be the brave soul. I literally was like, let me raise my hand.
Yes, I
Hi.
saw you too. So I was like, I don't want to call her out though.
Oh, I appreciate it. Hi everybody. I will say, I had put in the chat understanding and also just being able to, especially with the work that I'm doing, I do gun violence prevention and intervention. So a lot of the things that shows up is trauma, right? And having to navigate those spaces with different individuals who have experienced that. And at real time, we're having to save lives, right? And making sure that systems don't continue to harm Black and Brown folks specifically. And so for me, showing up to understand and really be there for people and connect, I think that's like one of the biggest values that I have because I do have lived experience on gun violence and having to show up as like, yo, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. How can we, make a successful community together, right? And it looks different in different communities. And I think even a deeper core value is following the 6 principles of key on nonviolence. And that is a difficult practice to follow.
Yeah.
If anybody knows it, it's what the elders will consider the last testament of Dr. King and how he was able to move through the Poor People's Campaign, right? Just being resilient, nonviolence, and being able to follow through with strategy and understanding the overcome you know the outcome is like the universe will always be on the side of justice. And that's something that I have really made sure that I embody, but also I show that up for others as well, because that's really important for people to know that our struggles is not what defines us. And so yeah, it's those are some of the core values that I'll share.
That's
um,
incredible. I have chills. Like,
thank
first, thank you like so much for the work you're doing, right? And
you.
what would it look like, to be in a space and to really be able to say, like, oftentimes when people go through violence, and you didn't say this, but I'm just curious, like, if they're not seen and if they're not heard in their experience and they're not met, how often does that violence like turn on them and turn on the communities if they're not kind of received in that way, right?
Yeah. I mean that one of the biggest issues that we have to drive into is like going into the root problems of gun violence, right? And I can't sit here and say that we have the answer for everything because honestly, we've been seeing the same second leading cause of death um, for over 30 plus years. And still have not been able to change that when it comes to young Black men in America. So
Mhm.
for me, it's taking the time. At least what I try to do is take the time. We have what's called an ecosystem across the country where we're connecting with prevention folks, intervention folks, and also incorporating um, you know uh, uh, law enforcement folks, because it's having to redefine what public safety looks like, but making
Mhm.
sure that community voices are there first and foremost, and having to retrain officers, which that becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
So it is a system in itself. But yeah,
So, Chris, do you mind if I kind of use you as a little case study again, not to put you
yeah,
on the spot, but
no,
I think this is just as a perfect example here. Uh, In one breath, you are really recognizing, right, the unique, the gift that you give of being able to hear people. And then I heard you say, you know, we can't solve everything, right? And that's one of the ways when we show up in spaces, consciously or unconsciously, that we start to discount ourselves. And trust me, I know this deeply because I do equity work myself. It is really hard to go in a space and say, this is what I can bring to it when it's something that's so big that we don't have control over, where there are oppressive systems, right? But here's the thing, we're not going in with a guarantee, right? What we're going in with is here's what I can bring to be able to make progress and to make an impact, because what we're seeing of what's been done hasn't been enough, or it hasn't really made the transformation. So if you were to go into space and say, one of the things that I do is I help people to feel really seen so that we can actually get to the root of what's creating this gun violence, right? Just like how I gave that example of I create warm spaces so that high achieving people can melt and they can be vulnerable so then we can get to the root, right? If we named that that's really what we're delivering, as opposed, not opposed, but to do, again, and I have so much empathy for you because I'm in this right now myself, right? Like being in these spaces where there's just, it feels like such a big burden. But as a leader, being empowered is not about taking responsibility. It's about creating possibility, right? And when you're able to show up and say, this is what I can bring so that we can move things, instead of feeling like I need to give them a guarantee so that they'll be able to listen to me, it shifts everything. I'm curious how that lands for you and if there's anybody else that has anything to say on that.
no, I received that, Dr. Sweater. I do. It's one of those things, and I'm so grateful for that because it's you want to, as someone who has lived experience in that, you want to like save every life possible, but it is so impossible. And you're trying to show up in the best way that you can, in order for others to feel seen and have some sort of justice, right? Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
well,
you know, WIA, it's all social impact, right? So I think everybody here kind of recognizes this. And that's again where that overperforming or that perfectionist, right? It's only valuable if I do it 100%. Like, no, it's not. Because you said that word ecosystem. You're not the only one. While you have a unique thing that you bring to the table, you know, if we work in an ecosystem, then different organizations, different communities are going to need different people's approaches to it.
Oh,
Danita?
I do also want to do a quick
Oh,
time check.
oh yes,
For those
9:15.
of you who need to leave, I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. But
Yes,
if there's anything quick that we can still cover in the next minute.
yes. I did see somebody raise their hand. A couple of people raised their hand. I don't, there was
Hi, good
Danita.
afternoon. Uh, Thank you for today's very, very helpful and insightful. I just wanted to Chris, and probably to many other ladies that are here. I work in a space of mental health and substance abuse, criminal justice, reform, peer support, the whole nine, right? And so over the years of being in a space and being in a profession, but also being in the banking industry, people are people. We are all people, right? We're humans. And so, there's a level of where, as women, we come into spaces of we're nurturers, we're mothers, we're wives, like we have all these titles, right? But the piece that I think sometimes we're disconnected in when we're in the workforce and when we're in the community is that we are wanting to save everything and everybody, and we miss that space that we can hold for ourselves and to be able to compartmentalize and leave it where it is, right? And so, though it is very important, I know for me, what I have done to get out of the perfectionism piece is I authentically just show up as who I am, right? And I call them the gems or the proverbs of the day, and I leave people with those, those things. And I walk in grace. And I also put myself in a position where I lead by example. And when I'm home at night, that's where I leave it at, right? Work is at work, home is at home, community is community. And then I have more time to love and honor myself, right? And so where I don't feel compelled to want to have to show up in every space. And so as we're in this climate and we're in this time of where we are in the world and effervescing of wanting to change something, find out one thing that you can master and people will always remember you by.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Donita. Wow. I love these conversations, and I want to invite us to stay connected. And if you are is part of our WA community, just wanting to say thank you for being here. And if you are just learning about us, please stay connected. Go to our website, sign up for our newsletter, stay connected with Dr. Sweta. Wow, thank you so much, everyone, for really being here, staying here. Look at us. We're still here. We're past the top of the hour. Thank you for your openness, for your willingness to participate. Thank you, Dr. Sweta, for bringing these absolutely incredible, your energy, first of all, and your thoughts, and really creating this wonderful, warm space as you do in your own brilliance. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Any last parting
Yeah.
words, Dr. Sweta, before we go?
I just want to say, you know, I know that the work that all of you are doing is not easy. And I think with Danita presenced here, you know, compassion burnout is a real thing. And, you know, being in, I think some of this, well, what I shared here is will bring you, you know, coming back to yourself and shifting again from that responsibility to possibility, I really think is something that can help us to not only have greater impact, but also to be able to honor ourselves more. And so I really want to invite you to be able to give that to yourself. And just to say thank you, I feel so honored to be part of this community, and I'm so amazed by the work of all the women that are in the program and the things that they're doing. It's incredible.
Thank you, everyone. Uh, Good to see you all, and we will see you again soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Sweta.
Thank you. Bye.